During the Soviet winters, there was something more dangerous than the enemy: the cold. So brutal that even military engines would freeze in minutes. To survive it, Russian engineers created something strange. It looks like a chimney, but it's not. Its function would surprise you. In Siberia, with temperatures of -50 degrees, if the engines failed, the troops were left isolated. What was that mysterious structure behind the cab? Today, we will uncover the ingenious Soviet invention that allowed these trucks to stay alive where no one else could. The birth of a military solution for extreme cold. In the mid-1980s, the Soviet winter remained one of the Army's greatest adversaries. In the vast northern and Siberian regions, temperatures often dropped below 30 degrees below zero, and military units faced inhuman conditions during movements. Soldiers traveled in the open beds of trucks, sitting on folding wooden benches, protected only by a canvas tarp that made little difference between the inside and the outside. In such circumstances, condensation froze inside the vehicle, uniforms stiffened with ice, and it wasn't uncommon for men to suffer frostbite or severe respiratory illnesses. Before portable heating systems existed, soldiers improvised. Some lit small braziers inside metal boxes, and others wrapped themselves in thick blankets or sat on straw sacks to reduce contact with the icy metal floor. Sometimes, they even attempted to channel hot engine air to the back with improvised pipes. But this only worked while the vehicle was moving. The real problem arose during long waits when the cold took over everything. The Ministry of Defense of the Soviet Union understood it was not just about comfort, but also about survival and efficiency. Thus, at the beginning of 1987, the 38th experimental plant of the ministry was given a clear mission: to develop experimental versions of the Army's main trucks with heated platforms to transport troops without exposing them to the extreme climate. The technical challenge and the initial models. The models chosen for this task were four of the most commonly used in the Soviet armed forces: the Gaz-66, the Zil-130, the Zil-131, and the Kamaz-4310. They all featured standard platforms, metal arches, canvas tarps, and 3 foldable longitudinal benches. However, a system had to be added to ensure a tolerable temperature even at 25 degrees below zero. The solution came in the form of the AV-95 autonomous heater, a hot air device manufactured by military plant number 402. This apparatus operated similarly to modern systems from brands like Webasto or Eberspacher. It included a fan that drew in outside air, a diesel burner, and a heat exchanger that raised the air temperature to about 95 degrees before sending it to the cargo compartment. The heater was completely independent of the truck's engine, allowing its use even when the vehicle was stationary. Its fuel tank, with a capacity of about 12 liters, consumed around 1.5 liters per hour, offering about 7 or 8 hours of continuous operation. Safety valves and insulated metal ducts were incorporated to prevent fires or leaks. In addition, small fire breaks and filters were designed to prevent smoke or fuel odor from reaching the interior of the compartment. Isolation and comfort, a vital change for soldiers. To maximize system efficiency, engineers eliminated the gaps between the canopy and the platform's side walls, sealing them with foam and rubber gaskets. Adjustable ventilation valves and a better sealed rear hatch were also installed. Inside, lamps were added along with a button allowing soldiers to communicate with the driver through an audible signal. The improvements were completed with a small, removable staircase at the rear, making personnel boarding and disembarking easier. Although these details seem trivial today, at the time they represented a revolution in Soviet military comfort. Differences between trucks and their adaptation. In the Gazi 66, ZIL 131 and KAMAZ 4310 models, the heater was installed in the existing space between the cabin and the platform without major structural modifications. It was only necessary to lengthen the exhaust pipe, move the main tank cap, and add a small metal visor over the heater's air intake. These trucks used only outside air, which was heated and distributed along the floor through nozzles located on the front wall. However, the ZIL 130 presented a greater challenge. Due to its design, the system had to be placed on the cabin roof. Interestingly, the manufacturer itself, the Moscow automotive plant Likhatchev, had already used similar configurations in its trucks intended for Arctic regions. The new structural support of the heater was attached to the platform's front panel, and this model had the advantage of also being able to work in recirculation mode, reusing the hot air inside to improve efficiency. These variations caused thermal performance to vary between models. In field tests conducted in the spring of 1987, the GAZ 66 managed to maintain a stable positive temperature inside the box, even with 33 degrees below zero outside. The ZIL 130 and ZIL 131 achieved the same effect down to approximately 28 or 29 degrees below zero. The KAMAZ 4310, on the other hand, due to its larger size and cargo volume, only achieved satisfactory results down to about 16 degrees below zero. Impact on morale and health of the personnel. The effect on the troops was remarkable. For the first time, soldiers could travel for hours without being paralyzed by extreme cold. Internal reports indicated a significant reduction in cases of hypothermia, colds, and frostbite. Each truck usually carried between 12 and 20 soldiers, depending on the model, and the smaller ones, like the GAZ 66, maintained an internal temperature of about 10 to 15 degrees, enough for the men to remove their gloves and warm their hands. Compared to NATO armies of that time, the advancement was significant. Western forces mainly used closed or semi-armored transports with engine heating, but the Soviet Army did not have such luxury for all its vehicles. With the introduction of the AV-95, the technological gap was notably reduced. Problems and limitations. Not everything was perfect. In the KAMAZ 4310, the interior space was so wide that hot air dispersed quickly. The heater, with its limited power, couldn't maintain heat in the corners or the ceiling of the compartment. Additionally, the extra diesel tank could freeze if special additives weren't used, creating logistical issues by requiring exclusive fuel for the heaters. Another drawback was maintenance. Filters and ducts needed constant cleaning, as soot could clog the system or even cause small flare-ups. Despite these challenges, the experiment was considered a success, and it was recommended to continue development, especially by adapting the heaters to a full recirculation mode for larger trucks. The evolution and the end of the project. A second phase of tests under real conditions was planned, with personnel transport during winter maneuvers. But the economic and political collapse at the beginning of the 1990s interrupted all experimental projects. Many were shelved without completion, and the AV-95 system never reached mass production. However, the idea didn't die. In modern Russia, military trucks continue to use autonomous air or liquid heaters, directly inheriting the Soviet concept. Today, these systems are also used in civilian trucks, buses, and even RVs, where they function almost identically. They burn a small amount of fuel to keep the environment warm without relying on the engine. Historical curiosities and modern parallels. Some Arctic models of the ZIL already used additional heaters from the 1960s and 1970s, especially in versions intended for polar exploration. There were also double wall systems with fiberglass insulation, or even radiators, connected directly to the engine circuit. These rudimentary designs inspired the more advanced versions of the 80s. Fuel consumption for heating might have seemed high, but it was justifiable. An operational truck during a day's march consumed between 10 and 12 liters of diesel just to keep the interior at a stable temperature. An insignificant figure compared to the benefit of preserving the troops' health. Strange heating methods in history. The quest for warmth was not exclusive to the Soviet Union. During World War II, some armies channeled exhaust gases into the cabin to heat the air, with the obvious risk of poisoning. In other cases, small coal stoves or improvised radiators connected to the engine's coolant were used. In certain Arctic trucks, even radiant metal plates or double-walled cabins filled with insulating materials were used. These solutions ranged from ingenious to downright dangerous, but all shared the same goal: to beat the cold. Over time, autonomous heaters like the AV95 proved to be the logical evolution of these primitive ideas. They were safe, efficient, and relatively simple to maintain, making them a technical reference that still inspires engineers and enthusiasts today. If you were surprised by how Soviet engineering managed to overcome the harshest winter, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe, and hit the bell to continue discovering the hidden secrets of military machinery. See you in the next video, where the roar of the engine and history come together to challenge the cold, time, and imagination